All right. Well, hello, everybody. We want to welcome you to today's webinar. We've got an excellent webinar today focused on IPM in schools and some of the safety practices, best practices for safety with use of pesticides in schools. Schools are such a critical uh, touch point for our youth, and pesticides and pesticides in schools can have a tremendous influence on kids and their future development. So today we have two excellent speakers lined up for you. One is Sam Pauley. He's with the Missouri Pesticide Safety Education Program, and Dr. Deborah Rogers Curtis from the Green Schools Program with Missouri. With that, each of them bring years of experience in this topic. And with that, I'm just going to hand it off to you, Sam. Go on, and it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Brian. So this is a really critical topic, and I think it's become even more important in the last 10 years or so. And IPM in schools, what is IPM? It's Integrated Pest Management. I'm going to kind of go through that here in the next few minutes, what that means and why it's so important. And you see the intro slide here shows one of our guys on Missouri University campus all decked out with spray equipment. And that picture alone kind of invokes, I think, in the public a fear and how far we've drifted away from scientific knowledge about pest management and how critical it is. It's really developed an attitude I see all the time and when I'm giving presentations or even reading the news about pesticides, they're evil, we have to stop using them, they're poisoning the children. And it's just a lot of kind of I would say misinformation out there. And so that's what I'm going to try to overview today to equip managers at schools or anybody that has a pest control issue and how to deal with those kinds of attitudes and why we're doing what we do. And the smaller picture there shows some mystery items I'll explain as I go through this. So the first thing is the objectives today. We're going to define what exactly a pest is. We're going to talk about why pest management is not just important, it's essential. And we're going to define integrated pest management, list 4 types of controls within the IPM framework, and then explain the relationship between IPM, pest management effectiveness, and safety. And that's something I don't hear a lot of discussion about, is effectiveness in pest management. So first of all, what is a pest? Now this is a funny one because I'm going to give you some definitions, but it could be whatever you want. I was asked this weekend at a neighborhood walkthrough workshop we did, what is a pest? What is a weed? And it's really anything that's not wanted. So what might be a pest for you might not be a pest for me. You might want a perfectly manicured lawn with just immaculate grass, and you have to kill all those dandelions because you don't like the look of them. I eat dandelions. I think dandelions are beautiful when they're in flower and when they go to seed. So I don't want to kill dandelions. I let them come up in my garden and my lawn. And if it's pops up in my garden, it's a free crop for me because I eat them. So it just really depends. But generally, it's something that's unwanted. It could be a plant or animal out of place. And I think one of the key terms is harmful. And it might be harmful in the sense that it eats your crops, it damages your landscape, or in this case, the photo is bed bugs and they're a health hazard. You don't want bed bugs biting your skin at night and leaving blood drops all over your bed. So that's where we're looking at schools. There are a lot of pretty hazardous creatures that can get into a school system, especially I'm thinking cafeterias, but really anywhere. So take a look at some of these pests, specifically health hazards. You look at the rat here that I killed. I have a lot of, we'll call it experience coming from the state of California with rodent control. And if you look into rodents and you study them a little bit, they can carry a lot of pretty bad diseases that can cause blindness or death in humans as well as your pets. And rats and mice, rats especially, had basically overrun the state of California. I would be driving to work and just see them running across the road in front of me. And I can tell stories that aren't even appropriate in public like this, but just, I mean, vile. It's horrible. And they carry, I mean, everything from bubonic plague to hantavirus. And so you don't want these in your cafeteria in your school. Let's just put it simply. Then you have building destroyers. People don't think so much about what they can do to your structures, but you can hear stories in third world countries of whole structures collapsing on families and kids because termites and carpenter ants and these kinds of structural building destroyers get into play. And here's some ants on the right. They're crawling in and out of a house. And then, of course, you have your crop killers if you have a school garden or even a landscape, your soccer field or your landscape out in front of the administration building, different type like these June beetles here, they can attack both garden crops or agricultural crops and your landscape with their grubs and the turf, leaving big splotches. Well, if you're school board, your administrators, or your financial supporters come and they don't like the way the landscape looks, that might not be a big thing to some people. Like, oh, who cares? It's a landscape. It's not food. But politics can even come into play. So again, it really depends on what your ultimate goals and what your priorities are. But all of these factors can come into play. Again, what is a pest? Looking more at the plant world, anything that's unwanted or troublesome or even bothersome. And that can be gnats getting in your face that maybe don't necessarily bite. But when it comes to plants, if you have powdery mildew all over the leaf, you see here, that can look pretty ugly. And parents coming in to pick up their kids every evening, man, that looks pretty ratty here. What kind of school district is this? Dandelions, daisies popping up in your lawn, and these different pests that make your landscape look bad. Now, getting into the health side of things, I don't want you to memorize this table or even probably read through it, can skim it real quick. But the reason I put this up here was just a quick example of one type of bug, not necessarily, um, we can have, insects, you can have mites. There's a lot of different arachnids in the overall, we call them bug world. But this is looking at ticks specifically. And I hear all the time, oh, you only have to worry about those deer ticks. They're the ones that carry Lyme disease. Lyme disease is the big problem with ticks. And no, it's actually much more complex than that. Basically, you don't want to get bit by a tick, period. So this table shows the Lyme disease is the black-legged tick, but I've heard so many times, oh, that's just a dog tick, it won't hurt you. Look there on the left, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. I know I have a good friend that has Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and it's a lifelong battle for her now. She had it for months before it was identified. And Lyme disease is the same type of thing, but look at all these diseases: babesiosis, tick paralysis, tularemia. There are all these diseases from all these different ticks, and some of them just list multiple tick species. So you do not want to be getting bit by ticks. You want to be taking appropriate management measures. And this isn't getting into fleas and mosquitoes and mites and biting gnats and all these other problematic insects and arachnids that are out there that can bite you. So the point here is we need pest control is essential. It's for the health of our children, the health of society, the health of our structures, even in the case of structural insects. And there's just a lot to this that makes it way more important. I personally don't want any of these diseases. So managing pests responsibly, that's really what IPM is all about. IPM, rather than just, oh no, there's a bug, spray it, is more of a holistic approach. Instead of being reactionary and, oh no, this bug just showed up in our building, what do we do about it? You should have started a year ago. You should have had a plan in place. You should have had some education and training for your staff, not just in the case of schools, your custodians, but the teachers and the cafeteria workers, even if they're contracted out. Everybody on the team should have some kind of basic training, even if it's just like an hour introductory. Oh, here's some things to look out for. Because if you're, let's just say you're the head custodian of a school, it's your job to keep the gophers or the voles or the moles off the soccer field and watch out for cockroaches and mice in the cafeteria. You should have some kind of overall information in place for everybody because they're your eyes and ears on the ground. They're the ones hearing the buzzing sound or seeing the nasty yellow trail going up and down the conduit in the back of the storage room that could be a rat or a mouse going up and down, leaving its sign that could become a problem later. And so you want to have your teachers, your other custodial staff, your contractors, everybody trained it to some extent. And you'll probably might have different levels of training, but everybody should be aware that they need to be looking out for the, uh-oh, I've been seeing a few cockroaches showing up in that one location. Then you can come in and take a look and see if you need outside help, pest management professional, or if you can handle it. But that's the overall concept of IPM. You have education up front, then you have this big long-term plan for long-term prevention that starts way ahead of time, regular monitoring, and a whole combination of tactics. So you need to know the pest. This is, I think, one of the biggest problems I see, whether it's in schools, individual homeowners. 10,000 acre soybean farms is not knowing the pest up front. You just start spraying. We got this bug, get an insecticide. It might not even be a bug. It might be a mite that's in, doesn't respond to insecticides. So you need a miticide. A lot of problems with not knowing the pest. I would say driveways and sidewalks are one of the biggest violations of this. Is, man, Sam, this stupid pesticide doesn't work. I keep buying this herbicide. I think that brand is no good. And then you look at the plant, the weed, and it's not even listed on that, or is not effective with that herbicide. Or it's the wrong time of year. The plant has shut down because it's the dry hot season, and so there's no respiration going on, and that plant is not taking that herbicide in. So it's just a lack of information, lack of reading the label, lack of education. And that's where knowing the pest, knowing how to prevent it up front, having some education pays off. And that's where IPM becomes such a holistic approach. And again, one of the points here of IPM is you don't jump straight to the pesticide. You have other measures in place, which we'll talk about a little bit more here. So the goals of IPM are protecting human health, reducing damage, reducing environmental pollution because you use less pesticides, reduce exposure of your workers to pesticides, and then reduce cost. It's a lot cheaper many times to just plug some holes in the back of the cafeteria rather than going and spraying every month. We see a lot of that. Some of these pest control companies will knock on your door and you've got some serious problems. Look at my little device here. You've got these, and these. And they'll go through and show you centipedes and scorpions and all these pests that you don't even have in your neighborhood or your region. We've got to get you on a prescriptive spray once a month. We'll come. We'll charge you this huge sum of money. We'll keep your space sprayed, and we'll keep those black widows down so your children can be safe. And that's all marketing, lack of education, and they can make money on this. So we want to have our school system educated and have a good plan in place. So what are your treatment options? I kind of mentioned education. That's your first treatment option. You're not actually spraying a pest or smashing the pest. You teach your people. And then cultural, physical, biological, and finally chemical control are your main options. So exclusion is absolutely one of my favorite. I have fought rats and mice on farms and in our homes. Like I said, in California, we had just, I mean, the rat population was crazy. And the first thing is exclusion. If you have conduits, usually you'll look at conduit, water lines, your plumbing, and the holes are cut too big. And so those pipes go through the holes in the house, and you've got all this space, half inch, maybe even inch wide. Easy game for mice, probably even rats, definitely cockroaches. They're coming in and out. And so the first thing you do, this picture was actually in Buckeye Stadium at Ohio State University, and the pest management guys were showing us their whole strategy in the cafeteria area there. They got tens of thousands of people stacked up there trying to buy their hot dogs. And so these are some unique methods they have. They got this, it's almost like a glue board, sticky stuff they can stick in these cracks, and then they've got this wire mesh stuff. It's like chainmail that knights in shining armor would wear, and rats try to chew on it and it just hurts their teeth, and you can jam your passageways with that. And then this is some proprietary, they're rent to kill caulking, and it's again got it's impregnated with shredded steel, and nothing can bite through it, and it'll seal and keep out all your insects like your cockroaches, your ants, your mice. Great stuff. Oh yeah, and then I almost forgot the one down here, the picture of the black thing. That's a plug, a drain plug. And one of the common places you get drain gnats, cockroaches, all kinds of nasty insects coming in and out is your drains. And so you can put this plug in there, and it's got a flapper valve so the water can go through it and escape if you have an overflowed sink or something, but it keeps those cockroaches and your pests from coming in and out. Scouting, monitoring, and trapping. Like I don't have time. It's a whole hour lecture in itself, but just an example, this photo here of fruit flies on the sticky traps. There's all different kinds of traps you can get for structural pests like bed bugs and nasty fruit flies that can attack your crops, cockroaches. I actually have some traps in my storage room in my building at University of Missouri, and I've been getting a few cockroaches here and there as I get through some of these holes I've talked about, like on the conduit and the heating lines. So it allows you to detect the presence of the pest before they explode in population. You can identify, do we need to treat now or not, and optimize your management. One thing I need to note here, though, is when you're dealing with, especially I'm thinking of a food area, a cafeteria area where the kids might be eating, you're going to have a lot lower threshold, like maybe none. You don't want a bunch of nasty, like one rat in the kitchen is one rat too many. Whereas out on the school garden, you can handle some fruit flies and some aphids before you have to treat. And it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of damage there. So it depends on your goals and the safety issue on how soon you need to take action. But trapping, scouting, monitoring are critical. Here's another technique some of these higher end companies are using. This is a proprietary, basically a scout trapping box. The mice and rats will run into this thing. There's an attractant in there, but no poison, so it's minimal hazard to the food safety issue. And you notice the RI Connect. This thing has a remote sensing device hooked up to it. So as soon as a mouse goes in there and trips it, the rent-to-kill guys, they're 10 miles away on some of their job and their cell phone buzzes and they look at it. Oh, we got a rat at Sector C in Buckeye Stadium. Make note, get over there within the next day to check that out and look for sign and see how bad the problem is. So the technology now, phenomenal what they can do to detect insects like bed bugs or rats or whatever the pest is. Cultural and sanitation. Boy, I started into the pest management industry back in the 90s, and I remember hearing horror stories of somebody with a giant greenhouse and they call the extension agent and say, "Hey, I've got major disease outbreaks wiping out my nursery crops. I need help." And they the extension agent came, started walking around. Man, you were really getting hit with some serious diseases here, and kind of asking questions and scoping the site out, and gets around to the side where the north wind was blowing through, and here's the compost pile. All the dead, diseased, dying plants were being dumped upwind of the greenhouse, and all those disease spores were blowing right through the vents into the greenhouses and just causing a massive outbreak of diseases. So cultural sanitation. This is a picture of a rototiller where soil was flipped up onto it, carrying fusarium and wiping out the watermelon crop. Same thing in your with rats and cockroaches in a cafeteria or in the school. You store food in your classrooms, you're probably going to start attracting insects at least that are going to find cracks and crevices or open window during a hot day and you want some ventilation coming in. I mean, you put the bait out there, these pests will come. So having things cleaned up and sanitary is critical. And Brian, I get excited about this stuff, and I can talk for hours on each slide. So if I go over, just tell me to get off of here. But
You're
this is
doing
another.
fine.
All right, thanks. This is another example of a physical control, and I love physical controls, whether it's sticky traps or just physical traps that trigger and capture a whole colony of pests coming in. But this is one I call them a Frazzle Destroyer, a hot lamp, and they're different colors, different kinds. But I have a couple of these that you plug into my wall, and we get a lot of gnats because my kids and I eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. And we got a half a watermelon sitting on the counter, and next thing you know, there's fruit flies everywhere, or gnats, I should say. And so I have a couple of plug-in lights and just leaving the door open, a few mosquitoes get in at night and flies. And so these things attract them and they'll land on it and either get fried or get stuck on a sticky pad behind it. So there's a couple different kinds there. And this is one again in Buckeye Stadium in Ohio that just those insects that do get in, they get attracted to the light, big sticky pad behind it, and they get stuck. And you can swap that out every couple of days depending on pest pressure. So no pesticide required. A great way to reduce your chemical exposure to your workers and your kids and people in the area. Biological controls aren't such a big deal on a school system, but if you have a school garden, which seems to be becoming more and more popular all the time, and even in your soccer fields and your turf, the beneficial insects, birds like bluebirds and martins and swallows that you can attract. And list barn swallows here. They're more nesting on your walls of barns and sheds, but the tree swallows and violet green swallows in different parts of the country, you can put nest boxes out for those. Like the bluebirds, they'll nest in boxes and you can attract them. And they're a great control for your insects. Bats, toads, frogs. That's why having biodiversity and encouraging a healthy landscape is really important because they can wipe out different kinds of pests. And then, kind of as I'm fading out here, in my presentation, one of the things I want to emphasize is IPM pest management effectiveness and safety all go hand in hand. And you can see this picture, unnamed guy at an undisclosed location on a campus. And at least he's got pants on, but he's short sleeve shirt, no gloves, and he's spraying pesticides. So he was mixing, pouring concentrate into a sprayer, pumping it up. There's probably material drizzled all over the equipment, and then he's out there with no gloves. That's one of the fastest ways to absorb chemicals. One of the most common. There's a modern study that's been going on for about 30 years, and they've monitored these families who used pesticides heavily over the decades. And now that we're getting into the 30s and the years of study, they found the number one way people are getting pesticides into their livers and their bloodstream is not wearing gloves. And just a few facts here. 2017, 84 reported pesticide illnesses, but who knows how many weren't reported. And the public perception, am I going to get cancer? What's this stuff doing to the environment? That's why it's critical to have such an educated, well thought out program. And if you manage your pest effectively, you have to spray less, you have to take less action. And that's why the effectiveness is so important. And then just the overall safety of your program, training your applicators in safe, wearing the proper PPE, the personal protective equipment, unlike this guy. And you'll never be able to quantify, like you look at these paraquat lawsuits or the glyphosate lawsuits. Everybody's getting cancer and Parkinson's from Roundup and from paraquat. Really? Where's your evidence? There is none. You can't quantify that or even qualify it. You could be getting those diseases from pumping gas and breathing the gasoline fumes or using the cleaners on your counter. So the point is, we just need to stay safe up front, minimize our pesticide use, know how important those pesticides are and how they're keeping us a lot safer than having rats and mice and cockroaches carrying salmonella and hazardous viruses and fungi and bacteria across our food surfaces. I would much rather risk being exposed to a pesticide than have some of those nasty diseases with rat feet in my food. And again, that's why education and outreach is so critical. And so that's kind of IPM and pesticide safety for schools in a nutshell. I hope that's helpful and at least stirs your imagination and helps you think about how you might be able to do better with education, training your staff, more effective and well thought out pest management. So thank you. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Look up, just Google us, MU extension pesticide safety, and you'll find our email and our phone number there. And thank you for listening today.
Thanks, Sam. Deborah, while you're getting ready to share your screen, I thought I'd go on and ask Sam a couple of questions. And Sam, if you would, do you have a specific recommendation? Like I liked the slide where you were showing the lights for the gnats. Is that something that you'd recommend schools get?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I first found those at a goat dairy years ago, decades ago, and they were adapting, like looking around for all the best technology in the world, and they were finding stuff like some Israeli technology where like their goats had these wristbands that were hooked up to a computer and could scan everything that's going on. I was just like blown away. And then I went in their kind of admin building and their offices, and they had small versions of those that were just plugging. You plug them into the wall in your outlet, and then they have a sticky trap on the back, but that attractant colored light and I mean, all kinds of insects from wasps that get in the house to mosquitoes and flying ants, everything would just go and get stuck on those. So you can just Google insect sticky light, attractant light, and there's a whole bunch of different types now. There's some that take batteries that are like little pillars you can put up on top of your bookshelf or your counter, and then there's the plug-in kind, so you can put them in different settings. And then there's the bigger one like I showed where you can plug those in and they light up with a strong attractant light. That, especially for lower infestations, can take out most of your insects up front without even having to do any kind of sprays.
And one more question for you, and then Deborah, we'll go with you. But your comment regarding the operator like not having gloves. Will any type of glove work? Like when I go out to some of the big box retailers, I guess I'll see I guess surgical gloves, or I'll see some inexpensive latex gloves for sale. Will those, just pretty much any coverage? Is that what you would recommend? Or I presume you wouldn't want like leather, necessarily wouldn't want leather gloves, because leather would maybe like soak it in, or maybe I'm wrong.
Right. No, that's a great question. That's one of the things I usually bring up in a safety discussion is there each glove is a different chemical composition and will hold up longer than or shorter than others. So latex not recommended, standard dish gloves not recommended. They will start breaking down sometimes within minutes, sometimes within hours depending on the chemical. So there's two basic types I recommend, either nitrile, those are the green ones, or neoprene, which are the black ones. And you'll see they'll usually say chemical resistant glove somewhere on the package. You can get those at any of the big box stores, but the thing to watch out for is you'll see chemical resistant glove on the real big on the label, and then you open the glove and it's got a cloth liner inside. Those you'll get all sweaty, and then you'll get a couple of drops of pesticide maybe work their way in, and now you basically have like a nicotine patch, but instead of nicotine, it's whatever pesticide you're using, and it soaks into that cloth, never comes out, and sit there and soaks into your skin every time you put the glove on. So it's probably as bad as not having gloves at all. So make sure you have the unlined chemical resistant gloves, nitrile or neoprene, black or green gloves, and the longer sleeved ones are best. So great question. And yeah, no leather gloves, no absorbent gloves. The work gloves you get like at Harbor Freight or Dollar Tree with the cloth back, no. And definitely not the thin disposable latex or rubber gloves. You want those two resistant ones. So good question.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, with that, we are excited to have the combination of both Sam and Deborah on. Deborah, as you've mentioned, or we've talked, you're a former principal that now works for the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council, and you're the Green Schools Coordinator. And there is a nice Green School IPM in schools document that is available through the Green Schools program. With that, I'll hand it off to you, Deborah. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I just learned a lot from you, Sam. So thank you so much. That's great information. So, like Brian said, my name's Deborah Rogers Curtis. I am a former school principal. I was in St. Louis Public Schools for the past 13 years. And most recently, I was the principal of Patrick Henry Elementary, which is located right downtown, right by the old football arena, if you're familiar with St. Louis at all, about 10 blocks north of the Arch. So there's a lot of interesting pests that I experienced as a school principal, particularly since the school building itself was over 100 years old. And we also had an enormous school garden in the back, which was both a blessing and, from a pest perspective, a slight curse, because we attracted quite a lot of both bugs and actual animals. And with our building being so old, we attracted quite a lot, and then we allowed them in because we had little tiny gaps here and there, sometimes very large gaps. We had squirrels, we had raccoons, we had bats. One time we had a snake that was utterly terrifying. And then, of course, bugs galore, just bugs everywhere. We also had a cat one time who somehow got in. Not sure how that happened. But we actually got the cat adopted by a family, so I count that as a win. But as the school principal, I worked a lot with IPM and with our school district and our custodial staff, and buildings and grounds to control and to try and mitigate all of the different pests that you could encounter in a school. And like Sam mentioned, schools are just ripe for attracting critters because of the cafeteria, because of gardens. And then, of course, every single classroom teacher insists that they must keep food in their room. And then they're very upset when there are bugs in their room, and they're shocked that that happened. So there's a lot of pest experience that I've gained over the last 13 years. But currently, I am the Green Schools Coordinator with the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. As an organization, we work with making buildings and the built community more sustainable. And my position is to consult with schools who want to go green and who want to become more sustainable. So these are a few pictures of some schools and students who are in our programs. They can take on all kinds of projects like recycling or gardening or creating a better indoor air quality system. There's a lot of different things that our students participate in. We run 3 different school programs. The first is kind of the entry level program, and that is the Green Schools Quest. And this is a 6-month project that schools take on to say, you know, we kind of want to see what sustainability is all about. We'd like to focus on this one specific sustainability initiative. They get a mentor from the field who's an expert in some form or fashion, and they take on this project for the next 6 months. They submit their project to a panel of judges, and then there's prizes and all kinds of great things to be won. The next level up after they complete a year of the Green Schools Quest is to become a Missouri Green School. And this is in partnership with the Missouri Environmental Educational Association, MIA. And so between our 2 organizations, we make sure that schools who want to be more holistically sustainable can really have a roadmap for how to do that. So this might be everything from the ground all the way up through the air. So they do things with, you know, some programmatic things like recycling, but they might also do some really big structural changes to their building to promote better indoor air quality and to meet even some of those LEED standards. And then after they're a Missouri Green School, they can work their way up through that program and become a nominee for the U.S. Department of Education Green Ribbon School. This award is only given to up to 5 schools in each state every year. And usually it's actually only 1 or 2 per state because this is a very difficult award to win. When I was a school principal, my school won this award and it took years to achieve. So it's a lot of work. But basically to become a Department of Education Green Ribbon School award winner, you really have to be fully integrating green initiatives and sustainability practices through everything from student health and wellness to your actual physical building, and all the way through the education of your school in your curriculum and your parent education and your community integration of sustainability. So for us, sustainability is the most important thing that a school could accomplish beyond student safety and, you know, academic achievement, because sustainability matters so much for students. Really, the 3 pillars of sustainability apply to schools: people, profit, planet. So the economic, the social, and the environmental elements of sustainability are extremely important for any school district. I know it sounds crazy, but schools are a business and they have budgets, often incredibly tight budgets. And so Sam and Brian and Sharon, you probably have dealt with schools that, you know, they want pest control and they want pest systems and in place. And then they say, but I can't afford your prices. And so giving them a system like IPM is extremely, extremely important for their budget because it will honor the money that they do have available for pest control while also keeping them in a sustainable mindset. Social and environmental really come down to the students in the building, the staff in the building, and their impact on the environment. And it sounds crazy, but we actually have quite a few schools who have been able to go, you know, towards their goals or zero waste. And they're creating an environment where their students are so passionate about these projects that they're teaching their parents how to become more sustainable and more environmentally friendly. It's very inspirational to see. So for the world, of course, school sustainability matters, but for the school community, it really matters as well. The school finances, like I mentioned, are extremely important. My school budget was less than $30,000 a school year for all things, including technology and any celebrations we wanted to have, paper, pencils, tissues, you know. So using $27,000 a year is, you know, pretty tough. So when you're talking about an integrated pest management system that can save even $1,000 out of a $27,000 budget, that's a huge amount of savings. So, you know, making sure that we put money at the top of our list just to be practical is really important. But also sustainability in schools provides a better physical environment for the students and the staff. This was so apparent during COVID. It's one of the most positive things that came out of such a terrible situation. And that was a real obsession with indoor air quality. And to say, you know, we care about what our students are breathing in. And during a pandemic, it really mattered how much air was filtrating through these systems and whether the filters were clean and whether we could open windows and get fresh air in the building. But as Sam mentioned, you open the door or window for a minute and then you got mosquitoes. So understanding the balance of all of the different factors of sustainability, but to provide ultimately the best possible physical environment for our students, it really sets them up for success academically and emotionally. And then for the school community, sustainability also leads to a natural amount of partnerships and businesses and nonprofits that want to be involved in the school and create a much better environment for students to learn and opportunities for the schools. I remember as a school principal, we had a partnership with a local seed company, and they became basically second teachers in the classroom. They would take the class out and they would teach them how to garden. And the teacher kind of got like a little bit of a break because the expert in the room was really our partners, who only came about because we were going down this sustainability path, and we found them and they found us, and it worked out very well. And then for the students, school sustainability is incredible. It gives real life STEM experience. And, STEM is such a buzz thing right now. Everybody wants to know, well, what are you doing for STEM? What are you doing to help students understand science, technology, engineering, and math? And there's a really big push here, but a lot of times schools say, well, we're teaching those subjects, but they want more. Everybody wants more all of a sudden. And for school sustainability to provide these hands-on learning experiences is pretty incredible, especially because a lot of these experiences are probably free, if not free, very, very, very low cost. The easiest way to make a pumpkin field is to take a pumpkin and smash it into the earth, and your seeds will create a massive amount of pumpkin plants. And so, my students learned that the hard way. Actually, we accidentally spilled some pumpkin seeds and ended up with quite a lot. But just all this to say, school sustainability is extremely important, but it's becoming the norm. And so for school districts who are really looking to integrate sustainability into their school systems, particularly from a custodial standpoint or from an administrative standpoint as a district, you're in good company, and school sustainability is the wave of the future, and we literally won't be able to function without it in the future. This is just kind of another overview of the people, planet, profit elements of sustainability. And each of these elements really allows schools to flourish when we protect our biosystems, our biospheres, when we protect food security for families. School gardens are becoming increasingly popular because schools are not only providing breakfast and lunch and oftentimes a snack for students, they're usually sending home their garden produce as well. And so they're actually providing often recipes, plants, produce, and they're saying, here's some fresh veggies from our garden, feel free to cook them at home. So all of these elements and pillars of sustainability, they go into all of the UN sustainability development goals that focus on the environment and focus on people and focus on profit. And so school sustainability really fits within this world model from the UN to say, this is what we need to do with our school systems, and this is what we need to do in the built community from an education standpoint. Specifically for IPM, this is a major element of sustainability, is how to deal with unwanted pest control issues. So there's a couple of benefits specifically to the schools for IPM. Sam, you already touched on quite a few of these, but it's really important to emphasize that the ultimate benefit is that this is healthier for our students. And there's just nothing worse than a parent feeling like their child is not safe or healthy in their child's school. So it's really an amazing marketing, scheme to say, this is actually an incredibly healthy and safe space for your student, and to really mean it. Reducing those numbers of chemicals is essential at this point. Our students are overly exposed to chemicals in especially the United States, but also throughout the world. And so if we can eliminate exposure to chemicals, we absolutely have to. Particularly if your student attends an older school building, they've already mitigated a lot of things like lead paint and lead in the pipes. But there's a lot of hazards that are potentially in both new and especially old buildings. But you really want to make sure that if we can eliminate chemicals, then we should. So IPM, fantastic. It basically reduces any possible pesticide exposure. It also really helps the school campus itself. And a school campus should be nothing if not helpful to the environment, because it's a learning center and it's supposed to help things grow, including the children inside of it. So of course it should help the biodiversity of the land itself grow around it. So making sure that we can really support school gardens, and even if you don't have a school garden, supporting the landscape around a school is extremely important. Having even just green space has been proven to support children in an unbelievable number of ways. And then there's also, unfortunately, the reverse, where schools that are just pure blacktop and have no tree cover, no canopy coverage, the increased amount of asthma in that area usually goes up quite a lot. So making sure that we're supporting that biodiversity and also the landscaping. Like I mentioned earlier, IPM itself could be a learning opportunity for students. I know this is going to sound crazy, but as a school principal, when we had squirrels and bats and all the animals except for the snake, we always allowed our students to participate and watch what was happening. So anytime we had pest control come, if there was a class who was in the middle of lunch or in the middle of recess, they always were pulled out of that to come and see what was going on, because it is an actual learning opportunity. Also, kids love bugs and animals so much. So helping them understand how to care for our natural environment while also maintaining the indoor environment that you want was really helpful and important. And it was just a wonderful experience. I did not allow them to come and observe the snake. We weren't sure if it was poisonous, so we stayed away from that one. It also, school sustainability and especially IPM really allows for native plants and pollinators to grow on school campuses. This is becoming the trend of our time right now from a landscaping perspective. Native plants and pollinators not only are good for the environment, but they're also an incredibly efficient plant system that requires almost no water. So which is also extremely helpful from a sustainability perspective, especially as we use and overuse water. We really want to take away the opportunity to use up water that could be potable water that we could drink. And so really allowing our native plants and pollinators to grow on our school campus is essential. As Sam mentioned, this is an extremely proactive approach. This is not reactive. Reactive approaches are simply not helpful. I mean, they might help you in the exact moment that you have a cockroach in front of you, but they're not going to help prevent it from happening again. It's extremely expensive to be reactive only from a pest management perspective. And for a school, you just can't afford to do that physically, like literally, you cannot afford it. So really being proactive is extremely helpful. And then reducing the pest-induced property damage. I cannot tell you the number of times my old school building was under attack from something, but IPM kind of saved the day. Our windowsills, small things that you don't really think about, they really protected us and allowed us to not have to replace these massive, old, beautiful, but very expensive windows. And so that ultimately results in these financial savings for a school district. So I'm going to pause there. I think that's the end of my presentation. But ultimately, what I wanted to say is this connection between school sustainability and IPM is really essential, especially from a custodial perspective or from a school buildings and grounds perspective, mostly because it can lead to really clear results for children and for staff. And that's what a school district is all about. And so IPM is built for schools, essentially. It's a great solution, and it's also increases the amount of sustainability that's possible in a school district. So that's it for me. Brian, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Well, thank you. Excellent presentation. I really appreciated your insight, Deborah, from being a former principal and sharing what it's like. I learned a lot from you. I really like the student involvement part, where that way they can go home and share what they saw and what they experienced, and maybe, like you said, they're educating their parents. So very, Very, very informative. And for me, I really appreciated your insights on the pollinators, because that's in my lifespan, it seems like the monarch butterflies are going down, pollen amongst
Mhm.
other pollinators, and just those little gardens can have a big influence on our environment. So I learned a
Absolutely.
lot. Thank you. I think both of you all did excellent. Really appreciated you guys both sharing your knowledge and your expertise. We will get your contact information shared with everybody. And once again, thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you. Thanks
Brian.
for having us.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Take care.